Hello YouTube, Big Apple here today, and I'm going to talk to you about the Springfield XDM 5.25, which is this nice piece of Croatian machinery right here. So, overall, high quality pistol. I have competition bolted because personally I think that's the best use for this gun, and I'm going to give you some reasons for that later. It says it's made in Croatia, which I know it is. The frame says American, so I'm not positive on where exactly it's made, because if you look at the frame, it actually says right there, Springfield, Inc. in Illinois. Maybe it's just them branding it. The whole thing is probably made in Croatia, because if you've seen the HS2000, I'll show you a picture of that gun. This is actually based on that design. The original XD and the XDM are based on that. So this is mainly going to be talking about the XDM. I'm not really going to say, oh, this is what the XDM has, this is what the XD has, because I haven't shot them enough to know the main differences. I can tell you just by looking at them that the frame is a little bit slimmer on the sides, but that's about all I know. This review is for the 5.25 specifically, mainly because the slide is different. So if you look at the slide, you know, 5 1/4 inch barrel, got the cutout and everything. The things that I talk about with the frame obviously are going to be the same with any XDM. It doesn't matter what it is, you know, full-size frame or whatever. But for the most part, if I'm talking about the slide and things I like and dislike, that'll be about the 5.25. So, included in the box, and you can get this in a stainless or melanite coated finish. As you see, this is the stainless one. The things that the XD comes with far exceeds all other offerings on the market. I can't believe how much stuff they actually stick in this box. 3 mags, 2 extra back straps, a double mag holster, a paddle holster for the gun, a mag loader, and a cleaning rod with a nylon brush. They're not the highest quality of everything, but they do, you know, they're all here. So if you look, here's the box. Comes with your mags. Here's another magazine right here. Here's your nylon brush. Here's your extra back straps, your paddle holster, your double mag holster, and a mag loader. So it comes with a lot of gear. So yeah, you look at the price tag and you're like, it's a little expensive. Well, yeah, it's a little expensive, but you think about the extra stuff you would be buying if you got something else that didn't come with these accessories, and it kind of starts to look like a pretty decent deal. So it does come with all these things, and I think that's really cool that Springfield does that, and it comes in a pretty high quality box. And I'm not sure if this is watertight. I doubt it's watertight, but it holds up pretty well. It's a pretty good box. So Argos and features. 32 ounces of weight. I say that's largely irrelevant because it's a target pistol. I mean, I don't know who would carry a 5-inch gun. I don't know who would carry a 5 1/4 inch gun with a frame this long, but I see this as a target pistol. So it having a long slide and it being a little bit heavy, I don't really see as that big of a deal, because, you know, any weight that you add to the muzzle of a gun is going to make it have less recoil. And so that's ideally what you want this to be, you know, in it being a competition pistol, is you want quick follow-up shots and all that jazz. So the weight, that doesn't really bother me, and you can't really tell it weighing that much more than anything else when you're shooting it. So anyway, the grip and frame features, the glaringly obvious, the grip safety, in my opinion, is unnecessary, and it is in fact a burden. The slide cannot be retracted unless the grip safety is depressed, and I will say that at least the grip safety is made of metal, but it's still small and less usable than a 1911 safety. So this guy is the guy I'm talking about. So if the grip safety is not pressed, see, the slide will not come all the way back. You actually have to get your hand all the way there. So if you're trying to lock the slide back manually by pushing on this, it actually makes it a little tricky, because you see I got a gap right there. So I have to kind of wedge my hand in there and then try to do it to lock the slide back. So that's kind of a pain in the butt, because, you know, if you have some sort of malfunction like a double feed or something like that, where you have to manually lock the slide back, you really have to make sure you keep the webbing of your hand in here to push on that grip safety. Now the upside of it, like I said, it is made of metal. You know, it's surrounded in polymer, but it is made of metal. But, you know, of course, this kind of grip safety has a lot more surface area, is a lot easier to actuate, and you know, you don't have to go as deep into the beaver tail to get to it. So I don't really know what exactly they were trying to do with that. I'm not sure if the HS2000 has that, but all the XDs have that, all the XDMs have it. XDS has it too. I don't think it's necessary. I don't know why they put it on there. I don't see any point to have a grip safety. This gun has a grip safety because it was invented over 100 years ago, and they didn't want them to drop and just go off. They wanted to add a bunch of safety measures. That's why this has it. I don't know why this has it. This wasn't invented 100 years ago. This is a pretty modern gun. So that is the biggest negative of the frame, in my opinion, is the grip safety. It's unnecessary. The trigger is okay. It's better than a factory M&P, but not as good as a Glock trigger. The advertised weight is 5.5 to 7.7. I think it's probably around 6, so it's probably right in the middle of those. And the trigger reset is okay, but a bit jumpy. So the trigger is on the XDM 525, and probably on most other XDMs, is okay. It's got a decent take up here, so you can kind of predict when it really is about to break. A little bit stagey, not that bad, and the brake is somewhat clean. Not as crisp as some others, and then here's your reset. You can hear it and you can sort of feel it, but the thing I don't like, when you feel the reset, it kicks your finger forward and that's okay, but you actually have to go back to the brake point. So it doesn't reset quite as comfortably as something like this SR45. You can tell I shoot my guns a lot, huh? So on the SR45, very crisp brake, and you look at the reset, it goes right back to the point where it breaks again. So the reset on this is okay, but like I said, it's kind of jumpy. So you fire, it resets. You see it goes forward here, but then you still have to take up a little bit more slack again. So it took a little bit of getting used to. I was eventually able to shoot it okay, but the trigger definitely is something that would take some getting used to. If I owned this gun, obviously, I could work that out. I'd be shooting it a whole bunch. Trigger guard has a nice undercut and is flat and textured on the front. And I'm sure you've noticed all these little marks on here. This is from the owner of this gun. This isn't my gun. Took a little, made a little stipple job here with a soldering iron and made it very, very textured. Main things I'm going to be talking about though, here's the grip undercut right here by the mag well. Or not by the mag well, by the mag release. And then you got a nice textured flat front right there that I really like. So that helps with comfortability, helps you to get under here really well. And most modern offerings have that now. You see it on the SR45 right there. And of course, my go-to all the time, the M&P also has that undercut. But the one on here is done pretty well. It's a pretty deep undercut. So XDM did that pretty well, and that is a comfortable feeling thing. The back straps are changed out by a pin. I'm not sure if it's a roll pin or what. It is slightly annoying that you need a punch or something to push it through. I like how easy the back strap is to change on an M&P. How you rotate this and pull it out. The SR45 also has a pin. But it's not as set in there as deeply as this one. You see how that one's kind of set in there deeply. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. You're probably going to be shooting with one backstrap on here. But if you're trying out for flexibility and just running it with different backstraps and everything, that would take a little bit more work to get that backstrap off and swap it for something else. So, it's just something to take note of. 1911 grip angle, which is great, and it doesn't really feel that thin though. It doesn't really taper a lot. So when you look at the grip here, see how it's just straight the whole way. There's not a whole lot going on there. It's just straight the whole way. It does have this little spot where your thumb sits in. So, I mean, when you get a grip, you kind of got that, but it just, I don't know. It doesn't jump out at me as being as comfortable of a grip because there's no taper there. You know, it just feels like the same. And yeah, it feels a lot like a Glock grip, and I'm not a big fan of Glock grips for that reason. If you look at some of the ones I own, see how the Ruger SR45 here has a nice taper. So when you get in there, you actually feel that wedge that the top of your hand is sitting here in when you're right under that beaver tail. Same thing with the M&P. See, it's got a lot of taper. Of course, this is the large back strap, so it's going to be sticking out a lot, but it's got a whole lot of taper there, and it feels really, really nice for you. And then, of course, the 1911 is going to be mostly flat, but it's also extremely thin. So when you compare these, see the XDM actually has a good bit more width than a 1911. So the grip is okay. You'll see that being a recurring theme on here. I mean, it's a great pistol, but that, to me at least, there's not a ton to get excited about on a lot of the features of it. But regardless, that is how the grip is set up. The grip is longer to accommodate a larger magazine. So a 9mm holds 19 rounds, 16 and 40 and 13 and 45. I don't really have any problems with this. The extra capacity is welcome. If the gun were supposed to be carried, I think I'd be singing a different tune, but magazine ejection is very positive, and the mag well is beveled. These are very high quality magazines, by the way. You can see the stainless finish is really nice, and yes, that is 16 rounds right there and 40. So, like I said, the mag well is nice and beveled, and you see ejection is very positive. That mag just flies out of there. That's really nice. And the grip is a little bit longer. So when you see the extra capacity, like 19 rounds in 9mm, you realize, damn, that's a lot of extra capacity. But when you compare it to some other offerings, so here's the SR45, you see when they're up like that, that grip is a little bit longer. Same thing with my M&P. When you compare them side by side and you look at it, that grip is a little bit longer. Let's get them about equal right there. So there you go. You see that grip is a little bit longer. So the slight extra length does help. I mean, obviously it gives it a little bit more room for them to fit more rounds in the mag, makes it a little bit longer. Not that big of a deal, but the grip is a little bit longer, and I mean, you know, that's an obvious thing. So the mag is a little bit longer to fit there in the grip. So ambi mag release is pretty nice. It rotates when it's depressed. It engages the front of magazines. So you see the little opening there. And it's, I don't know, I guess I say rotates when depressed because it just feels different to me. You see when I push it, see it actually spins, it actually rotates forward. So it feels a little bit weird, and I do like that it's ambi though. I usually end up using my trigger finger to release the mag on most ambi mag release guns. I guess because that way I can have this, you know, this hand out here. I don't have to bring my thumb as far over. But you see how it rotates when you depress it. It kind of feels weird at first. You eventually get used to it, but it is different. And I guess there's a decent amount of tension there on the mag release compared to some others. You have to kind of give it some effort. But you see how it's kind of inset in there. So there's no accidental, you know, accidental pushing of the mag release that you're going to do, I think. It's well enough inset to where you won't accidentally push it, and it's got a little bit of tension so you won't accidentally push it. But for the most part, it's a pretty decent mag release, I would say. The rail is sturdy, and it offers some flexibility in mounting location. So you see it's got 3 little spots there. So if you want to put a light on it or something to use it for defensive purposes, you have that. Let's see, the takedown lever. Let's see, slide release and takedown lever are slim, and takedown doesn't require pulling the trigger. So you see these are pretty slim. They don't hang off too far on the side of the frame, which is really nice. And actually, to disassemble it, rotate this guy up, and this actually comes off without you having to pull the trigger, which is nice. And then I have this open. We'll talk about the next point before I mention it. On the inside of it, it has one giant metal rail for the slide in the middle, and then the rear is polymer. It's just an observation. It's kind of weird because when you look at the frame of most guns, they have metal here and here. If you look at this one, this whole chunk right here is actually metal. So that's basically a steel guide rail right there, and this is polymer. So I can't really see any wear on the polymer. I don't really think it's doing anything. I think most of the tension that's going to be on that slide riding is going to happen up here. So I don't think it's a big deal. It's just kind of weird looking to me that this whole back piece is polymer and this part is steel. But that piece in the middle is so huge. I mean, you see how big the guide rails are right there and how big that metal is. I guess for comparison, I'll show you one of the ones you've seen the inside of before. So if you compare it to the M&P, see that middle rail is huge. So on the M&P, these are the parts that actually sit on the rail, inside rails of the slide right there. So you see how big that hunk is, but then the M&P's got metal in the back, and the XD doesn't. So, I don't know, it's merely an observation. Is it one more durable than the other? I really can't tell, I have no idea. I haven't fired this enough to really be able to tell, I guess, but I mean, looking at it, I don't see any unnecessary wear on the rails or anything in the back, the ones that are made of polymer, so I doubt it's anything you have to worry about. I just thought I'd point that out because I thought it was very different compared to a lot of other pistols that I've looked at, so that just goes for mentioning. Slide features. So I like the Springfield and Croatia insignia right there. See that? That's kind of neat. Just thought I'd mention that. Other things on the slide, the glaringly obvious, the slide cutout. It's designed to reduce overall weight, what I think, and it's supposed to reduce weight at the muzzle. Why exactly? You know, because to me, it makes it not a great combat and fighting pistol because debris exists. So it depends on your environment, but like if you're doing some sort of pistol course where you might get a lot of dirt in there and stuff, it could actually seize it up pretty bad because then the barrel won't be able to move around as well. It won't be able to lock up. So that gaping hole right there, I guess what Springfield was trying to do, and this is just an educated guess, is reduce the weight of this thing. And the Glock does the same thing with the 34. And I don't really understand why they would do that though, because if it's a competition pistol, having weight at the muzzle reduces recoil. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with having a little bit of extra weight, you know, at the muzzle? If you look at some other 5-inch guns, see that one's sealed up right there. If you look at the 1911, of course, it's sealed up. So some guns will have this cutout right here for a compensator. So maybe they're giving you the ability to put a barrel in it that's compensated and has holes cut out to where the slide is already cut out. But when you don't have a barrel that isn't compensated already, why is that there exactly? Maybe somebody in the comments can tell me why the slide cutout is there, but I just really don't think it's necessary. That few extra ounces of metal may actually tame recoil a little bit better. Not like this sheet's that harsh, and I'm going to talk more about shooting impressions, but I don't really understand it. So maybe somebody can explain it to me, but I really don't understand why there's a slide cutout there. It has a match grade 5 1/4 inch barrel with great lockup. It's a great barrel. It's melanite coated, and the serial number matches all over the place, which I really like. So it actually has a serial number on the barrel here, on the slide right here, and then on the frame down here. So in a polymer gun, the frame to slide fit isn't really that big of a deal. But I like when they put when they put the serial number on the barrel and on the slide, so you know that they actually took their time to make sure it was fitted right. I'm sure if you put this thing in a ransom rest or something like that, it would shoot really good groups. I mean, you can just tell this barrel is high quality just by shooting it, by feeling it, by looking at the finish and everything. That's a very high quality barrel. And yes, that barrel is 5 1/4 inches. So here's my 5-inch M&P. If I line them up right there, you see it actually is a 1/4 inch longer. It does add a little bit more there. So I bet you get some pretty sick velocity out of this barrel. Let's put it that way. If you're shooting some hot 9mm rounds or some hot 40 rounds or something, I bet those things are just zipping out of there. It's a very long barrel. So for competition, that extra velocity and the extra length and the extra sight radius and all that stuff probably makes this a much more accurate pistol. Then again, just an educated guess. I'm not positive with that. It does have a loaded chamber indicator. The loaded chamber indicator isn't all that dramatic. I'll show you right here with loading some ammo. And these mags are very easy to load, by the way. I thought I should mention that because of that big opening right there. So, see the loaded chamber indicator right there? You see how it sticks up a little bit right here? Not as dramatic as the one on the Ruger. And it's not a window like the one on M&Ps and other certain guns like that. But you look at the one on my Ruger here, and you see how dramatic that one is when it's up. And you see the loaded one up. It sticks up quite a bit. That one isn't as dramatic, but it's still tactile enough to where you can feel it with your finger if you wanted to know if the gun was loaded or not. Merely an observation that it's not really all that in the way. But I do like that it's there. It's kind of nice that it's there. Is it that bothersome? Whatever. Some people get bothered so much by a loaded chamber indicator, I don't really care. As long as it doesn't obscure the sights and doesn't prevent you from doing certain things, I don't think it's a big deal. Especially this being a competition pistol and not being like a huge defensive pistol. It's got some pretty good serrations on the slide. It also has a striker indicator. And be careful because that striker indicator is pretty sharp. See that piece of metal hanging out right there? So if your gun is almost in battery or something and you want to tap it to get it in place, like that or something, be really careful because that thing is pretty sharp. I mean, that's metal. It's not like the striker indicator on my Ruger, which is inset a little bit. See, you can't actually feel it. You see how it sits right there? You can't actually feel the striker indicator on that one. But on this one, I mean, it's right there. You can feel it. So you see, that's it right there. So it does have a striker indicator I really like, and the serrations are pretty useful. They're fairly easy to get a grip on. Make sure you have a good grip on the frame, or you won't be able to retract the slide anyway. Remember about that grip safety. But it's not that hard to get a good grip on it, of course. Y'all know my favorite serrations are the ones on the M&P because they don't mess up your hand and they're deep enough. But the slide serrations are all right. Like I said, a lot of the things on this gun are like, oh, that's all right. But it's not like show-stopping or, world dominating. It's pretty good. The letters are roll marked on the slide, and the slide is beveled at the muzzle. I assume this is for easier holster insertion. You see how it's beveled right here? If you've seen the M&P 9L, so like the standard 5-inch M&P, it's actually beveled there. My core is not. You see how it's flat right here at the front? But on this one, it's kind of beveled here. I guess that's to make it easier to put in a holster or something like that. Or I don't know, maybe they're just cutting down on weight or something. Maybe somebody knows why, and somebody else can tell me why, because I don't know a ton about XDs. But I did notice that it's beveled there. All the letters on the slide are roll marked. You see how they're nice and cut in there. I really like that insignia. I like the XDM, and it's a pretty attractive looking slide. I gotta say they did a good job in making the slide look good and doing all that jazz. That's good. The sights. One of the best set of sights I've seen on a factory pistol. Beveled front sight, and it's got changeable fiber. It actually even has cut lines in the slide cut to recenter it if you move it. And it's got an adjustable rear with a sharp aperture, and it's actually milled into the slide. So this is one of the best sets of factory sights I've seen on a pistol. They are really, really good. Beautiful sight picture. I don't know if I'll be able to line them up perfectly, but it is very, very sharp. So you got a little bit of air between that front post and this rear aperture. And like I said, it's beveled at the front, so maybe this is also for easier holster insertion too. You see how the fiber is curved there. If you look at the one on my 1911 here, you see how it's completely flat. So most sights are actually completely flat like that. That one's slightly rounded at the front. Here's another sight right there, my HDs. You see how they're flat there. On this one, it's got a little beveling. See how it's kind of lower at the front than it is at the back. It actually has these some little cut lines here. I don't know if you can see on either side of this. It actually shows you where that sight is centered. That's another little thing on this one that's actually kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. And if you really look at it, looks like the sight is actually a little bit to the left. Because you see this cut here has a little bit more air behind it than that one does. So like in here, you see that little line? That shows you where that sight is centered up. I think that's pretty cool too, because they're showing you where it's centered up, so if you do change the sights for whatever reason, you can get it right back where it was. And then the rear sight actually has some milling into the slide here to where that sight is. So they're able to get that sight in there nice and tight, and there's no worry about it messing with the slide or anything. It's actually cut there, and then here your adjustments are up and down. And it actually shows you where to line it up in the middle here. So this is a fantastic set of sights. And my Dawson Precision sights here on my 1911, the way they come, they're also fiber optic. Their sight pictures are very similar. The really only difference I can see is that this one is kind of rounded on the edges right there, and you see the ones on my 1911 are completely flat the whole way across. But besides that, dude, these are some great sights. I think these fiber sights only come on the 5 1/4 inch version. I'm not sure if they come on the 5-inch version. But regardless, yeah, so those sights are spectacular. They're really, really good. The guide rod is very large and hollow, and it actually uses a round recoil spring, which doesn't bother me, but it's not captive, and I don't really like that. Captive means the spring is actually captured on the guide rod. And it appears to use the same guide rods as standard length models. So what I mean by that, if you look at it, see how the guide rod's not the same exact length as the barrel? It's actually the same as it is on my M&P. It actually uses the same guide rod from a 4 1/4 inch version here. You see how it's the same way? I kind of like that. I mean, it makes it easier to change it out with others if you need to. Probably saves you a little bit on price too, so you don't have to buy like a special guide rod. But the spring is not captive, and like I said, it's very, very hollow and big. So you look at that, and it's like really, really big, and then this is the part I don't like. See, it's not captive, so it pops out immediately, and now you got this giant thing. So you got to wedge that back in there and push it in the right way. And I know you don't disassemble your gun that often, but it's just a pain in the butt. See how I'm wrestling this thing a little bit, and then you get it in place, and then you put it back together. So I know people can be like, "Oh, you're whining about nothing, man up, whatever." Well, I like that these. I know I keep going back to this one, but it's easier to take apart. But this one is actually captive, so when you take this thing off of here, see it sits together? It's just so much easier to get it back in place. I mean, you barely even have to wrestle it, and it's right back in place. And it's really the same thing with my SR45. Although I've changed the guide rod, but the original factory one is also captive. So having a captive guide rod, in my personal opinion, just makes everything a little bit easier. So when you look at it, see, it's all fit together there, right, nice and easy. So getting it back in place is no work at all. It just doesn't require anything. Whereas, with that one, you kind of got to wrestle it a little bit. That's kind of one of the big gripes I have about my Car CM9. It doesn't have a captive recoil spring, and that one's really, really stiff. So it's a little annoying. Is it that big of a deal because it's a competition pistol? No, it's not really that big of a deal. Their other ones may not even be captive too on their non-competition models. Is it annoying? Yes. Is it a showstopper? Not really. And I kind of wish that the guide rod spring was a flat wound spring and not a coil spring. So what's the difference in flat wound versus coil? Flat wound means that it's like a flat piece of metal like that, you see. And then a coil spring is just a regular round coil spring. I guess I can show you again here. If you look at the spring, man, that's a little bit difficult to turn up sometimes. See how that's just a regular coil spring? So that's the difference. And supposedly a flat wound spring has a little bit better lifespan. Has that been proven by science? Maybe. I don't really know. I guess do a little research on it, but supposedly it helps, or at least from what I've read, it's supposed to help a little bit. But anyway, this is something that nobody's ever mentioned anywhere that I've ever read about this, but the extractor on this is actually internal. It's pretty interesting. It allows the outside of the slide to be very, very smooth. So you see there's no extractor hanging out right here. So when you take it apart, you can see your extractor right there. See that? Internal extractor. Haven't seen that on a modern gun in a long time. So it just puts a little bit of tension on it right there, just like a 1911 would with an internal extractor. And I guess it works kind of like a leaf spring, not like a coil spring, like your regular external extractors do. So like on this one, see your extractor's external, and it's got a spring putting tension on it there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I've never seen anyone mention that before. Shooting impressions. Well, it's got a high bore axis, so I think the best choice in this would be to use 9mm. The 40 is a little snappy. I let a female shoot this one that was a new shooter, and she said she didn't like that it had a lot of recoil. I know that the longer slide and it having more weight probably helps negate some of it, but the fact that the bore axis is a little bit higher doesn't help, especially with something as snappy as 40. And for those viewers that don't know what bore axis is, it's how far away the muzzle is or the entire barrel is from your hand. So the closer you can get this set into your hand, the less felt recoil you're going to have, because it's going to be more of a push than more of a snap. You see what I mean? The higher the barrel is, the more it's going to snap. So if you got one, I'd probably suggest you get a 9mm or a 45, because those shoot softer than 40. If you wonder why that is, read up about 40. It's a high pressure round, so there's going to be a little bit more slide speed. It might be a little more violent, but anyway. The trigger takes some getting used to. It's got a different shape, and it's not super crisp. The reset's okay. With more time, I could get better with it, and I got better with it as I shot today. But it's just really thin compared to a lot of other ones, a lot of other factory ones. It's very thin, and the front of it's very thin. It's just a different feel. But with time, I'm sure I could do okay with it. Overall, the grip safety is annoying. It's allowable in a competition gun, and the gun's kind of big. But like I said, for a competition gun, it's good. So the biggest thing about this bothering me from being a defensive pistol is this big gap here and all that stuff getting in there. But besides that, for competition and sights and all the stuff that comes with it from the factory, I think this Croatian Target Master right here isn't too bad of a choice. It's really a matter of you go and hold this and feel the trigger and feeling everything that it has to offer. Because like I said, nothing about it is show-stopping, but it's still a pretty good gun, and I like all the stuff it comes with. So this is Big Apple. If you have any comments or questions, post in the comments, especially the things I had questions about. Thanks for watching.